My name is Audrey Callahan. I am 36 years old, and I am a senior property and asset manager based in Los Angeles, California. I have spent the last decade of my life building something stable and real from nothing but hard work, long hours, and a stubborn refusal to quit. And on a Tuesday morning in August, I found myself standing at the departure curb of LAX Terminal B, holding two crying 4-year-olds. I had not planned on seeing that day, watching a plane carry my younger sister toward the coast of Mexico, while my heart hammered so hard I could feel it in my throat. Ethan had both arms locked around my left leg, his little face buried against my knee, his whole body shaking with sobs. He could not explain because nobody had explained anything to him. Zoe was pressed against my right side, her tiny fingers twisted into the fabric of my jacket, crying in that high, broken way that children cry when they are genuinely terrified and have no words for it. Two small rolling suitcases sat on the concrete beside us. Around us travelers rushed past with coffee cups and rolling luggage completely unbothered, as if nothing unusual was happening at all. My phone buzzed in my jacket pocket. I already knew it was her. I shifted Ethan onto my hip, pulled the phone out with my free hand and read the message on the screen. "You have no kids and no real life anyway. Watch them. I'll be back in 2 weeks. Don't make this a big deal." There was a sun emoji at the end, and a wave. I stood there on that concrete curb with two terrified children clinging to me, the August heat pressing down on my shoulders, and I read that message 3 times. The first time my stomach dropped. The second time my jaw tightened. The third time something shifted deep in my chest, something cold and precise and absolutely certain. What my sister did not know, what she had never once bothered to find out, in all the years she had been leaning on me, was exactly how much power I held over the life she had built for herself. She assumed I would fold. She assumed I would panic cry, call her 100 times, and have her children bathed and fed and waiting at the door when she finally decided to come home. She had no idea what was coming. It started with a phone call at 9 in the morning. I was sitting at my kitchen table in Silver Lake halfway through my second cup of coffee and a stack of lease renewal documents when my phone lit up with Chloe's name. I picked up on the second ring because that is what I always did. That is what I had always done. "Audrey, thank God." Her voice came through breathless and rushed the way it always sounded when she needed something. "I am at LAX and I completely forgot my tax documents at home. The ones my accountant needs by Friday. I know this is so last minute, but can you please bring them to the departure curb? My flight board's in 40 minutes and I am losing my mind right now." I pressed 2 fingers against my temple and exhaled slowly. My coffee was getting cold. My documents were spread across the table. I had a property inspection call scheduled for 10:30. "Which terminal?" I asked. "Terminal B International." "You are the best, Audrey, I swear. I will explain everything later, just please hurry." I grabbed my keys. I should have asked more questions. I should have wondered why her voice had that particular edge to it, that practiced urgency she had been perfecting since we were teenagers. I had heard through my mother 2 weeks earlier that Chloe was seeing someone new, a self-described entrepreneur named Derek, who liked expensive restaurants and liked paying for them even more. But she was my sister. And that for a very long time had been reason enough. I pulled up to the departure curb at Terminal B 20 minutes later. I had barely shifted the car into park when the rear passenger door flew open. I turned around in my seat just in time to see Chloe shoving 2 small rolling suitcases into the back, moving fast, not making eye contact. Her jaw set with the focused efficiency of someone executing a plan they had rehearsed. "Chloe, what are you?" She unbuckled Ethan from his car seat on the sidewalk and lifted him into the back. Then Zoe. She pressed both children against the rear seat and stepped back, and before I could get a single complete sentence out of my mouth, she slammed the door shut so hard the whole car shook. I scrambled out onto the curb. "Chloe, Chloe, stop. What is happening right now?" She was already walking toward the terminal doors, her carry-on rolling behind her, her sunglasses on her shoulders straight. She did not turn around. She lifted one hand in a half-wave without looking back, the kind of casual dismissal you give someone who is overreacting, and then the automatic glass doors slid open and she walked through them and disappeared into the crowd. My chest felt like something had cracked open inside it. I stood on that concrete curb with others honking behind me and a security officer already moving in my direction, telling me I could not park there, and I could hear Ethan crying in the back seat, that gulping, helpless kind of crying that made my throat close up, and Zoe was pressing her small face against the window glass looking for her mother with wide, confused eyes. My phone buzzed. I read the message, the sun emoji, the wave. I did not call Chloe back. I did not scream. I strapped both children carefully into their seats, told them in the steadiest voice I could manage that everything was going to be okay, and I drove home. The drive back to Silver Lake took 31 minutes. I know because I watched the clock the entire way, focusing on numbers. Because numbers do not break down. Numbers do not abandon their children at airport curbs. Numbers make sense. Ethan cried for the first 15 minutes and then exhausted himself into a hiccuping quiet. Zoe kept asking in that small, earnest voice of hers, "Aunt Audrey, where did Mommy go?" And every single time she asked, I felt the answer lodge somewhere in my chest, like something with edges. "Mommy had to take a trip, baby, but you are safe with me, I promise." Back at the house, I heated up chicken soup from a can and cut the bread into small squares, the way I remembered Ethan liked, and I sat with them at my kitchen table while they ate, and gradually, slowly, the crying stopped. I gave them both a bath, found two of my oversized t-shirts for them to sleep in, and set them up in my guest room with every spare blanket I owned and the cartoon channel on low. Zoe grabbed my hand as I was pulling the door halfway closed. "Don't go far, okay, Aunt Audrey." My heart cracked straight down the middle. "I am not going anywhere, sweetheart. I am right here." I waited until their breathing slowed and deepened. Then I walked to my kitchen, sat down on the cold tile floor with my back against the cabinet, and I let myself cry. Not because I was scared, not because I did not know what to do. I cried because those two little kids in the next room had done absolutely nothing wrong, and they were going to wake up tomorrow morning still wondering where their mother was, and no 4-year-old in the world deserves to feel that particular kind of confusion. I pressed the back of my hand against my mouth and let the tears come until they stopped on their own. Then I stood up, washed my face at the kitchen sink, picked up my phone, and called Rebecca Nguyen. Becca was a family law attorney I had met 3 years earlier through a colleague, sharp and steady, and the kind of person who answered her phone at 11 at night without making you feel guilty about it. She picked up on the second ring. "Becca," I said, and my voice came out steadier than I expected. "I need you to listen carefully. My sister just left her 4-year-old twins at LAX and flew to Mexico. I have the children with me right now. I need to know every legal option I have, starting tonight." There was a brief pause on the other end. Then Becca said, "Tell me everything, from the very beginning." And I did. Becca talked me through everything for 2 hours that night, and by the time I finally set my phone down on the nightstand, it was past 1 in the morning, and I had 3 pages of handwritten notes and a plan. I was up before 6. Ethan and Zoe were still asleep, their small shapes curled together under the blankets in my guest room, like two question marks facing each other. I stood in the doorway for a moment, my coffee mug warm between both hands, watching the slow rise and fall of their breathing. Then I walked to my home office, sat down at my desk, and got to work. Becca had been clear the night before. Under California Penal Code Section 273, leaving a child in a situation that causes or permits the child to suffer harm or endangerment constitutes child endangerment, and under California Family Code Section 271, deliberately abandoning a minor without arranging proper care can be used as grounds for custody modification and financial sanctions against the offending parent. In plain terms, what Chloe had done at that departure curb was not just selfish. It was a crime on paper, and Becca wanted every single detail documented before anything else happened. I spent the first hour of that morning doing exactly what Becca instructed. I took screenshots of every text message Chloe had sent, time-stamped and saved to a secure folder. I wrote a detailed chronological account of everything that had happened the previous morning. The phone call at 9, the arrival at Terminal B, the moment Chloe pushed Ethan and Zoe into my car, the door slamming, her walking away without turning around. I noted the exact time, the exact location, the exact words she used. Becca had taught me a long time ago that in legal proceedings, vague recollections lose and specific details win. By 8:30, the child abandonment report had been filed with the Los Angeles Police Department and the California Department of Social Services. Becca handled the formal submission herself, and she called me the moment it went through. "It is on record," she said, and her voice had that particular steadiness that made me trust her completely. "Now I need you to pull every financial document connected to your sister. Everything. Bank statements, credit accounts, anything with both your names on it." I already had the laptop open. What I found when I logged into the joint emergency account made my stomach turn over so hard I had to press one hand flat against the desk to steady myself. The account had been set up 4 years earlier by our parents, intended strictly for medical emergencies involving the grandchildren. Chloe and I were both authorized users. The balance should have been nearly untouched. Instead, I was staring at $4,217 in charges spread across the previous 72 hours. Saks Fifth Avenue on Wilshire Boulevard, $840. A spa booking confirmation at the Esperanza Resort in Cabo San Lucas, $1,100. Nobu Los Cabos dinner for two $460. A couple's massage package deposit at the same resort is $312. 3 rounds of poolside cocktails, charged to a room under the name C. Callahan, the rest. My hands were shaking by the time I reached the last transaction. Not from sadness, from the pure, focused clarity of someone who had just been handed every weapon they needed. I picked up the phone and called the bank. I reported every transaction on that list as unauthorized, filed a formal dispute, froze the account immediately, and had Chloe removed as an authorized user before the representative had finished typing my account number into the system. The whole call took 11 minutes. Then I called Sandra Kim. Sandra was the building manager at Wilshire Grand Residences in downtown Los Angeles, a 40-story luxury high-rise where Chloe had been living for the past 2 years, in a 2-bedroom apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows and a monthly rent that she absolutely could not afford without my name on the lease. I had co-signed as the primary guarantor as a favor, the way I had co-signed and covered and stepped in as a favor so many times I had lost count. "Sandra," I said when she picked up, "this is Audrey Callahan. I need to formally notify you that I am withdrawing as the primary lease guarantor for Unit 3114 effective immediately. I will be sending the written notice within the hour." Sandra's voice was professional and precise. "Ms. Callahan, I want to make sure you understand the implications. Under California Civil Code Section 1954.28, when a primary guarantor withdraws from a residential lease agreement, the lease enters default status if the remaining tenant cannot satisfy the financial qualification requirements independently. We would be required to issue a 30-day notice to vacate to the tenant of record." "I understand completely," I said. "Please proceed." I sent the written notice 13 minutes later. By noon, Chloe's luxury apartment in downtown Los Angeles was under a 30-day eviction clock, and she was somewhere over the Pacific Ocean, with no idea that the foundation of her entire life was quietly caving in beneath her. It was while I was organizing the documents into a legal folder that Becca called again with a new request. She needed the children's birth certificates for the custody file. I went to the small rolling suitcase Chloe had shoved into my back seat, the one with Ethan and Zoe's things inside, and I unzipped the front pocket where Chloe had tucked a manila envelope of documents. Inside were the children's social security cards, their pediatric vaccination records, and 2 birth certificates printed on the official California Department of Public Health letterhead. I pulled Ethan's out first. I scanned down to the section labeled Father, Julian Brody. Last known address, 847 DeKalb Avenue, Brooklyn, New York. I sat down slowly in my desk chair, the birth certificate held carefully between both hands, and read that name again. Julian Brody. Chloe had never once mentioned him in 4 years, except to say he was completely out of the picture, and that was how things needed to stay. She had said it with such finality that none of us had ever pushed back. We had believed her because it was easier to believe her. My throat tightened with something that was not quite anger and not quite grief, but lived right in the space between them. Somewhere in Brooklyn, There was a man who did not know his children had spent last night crying themselves to sleep in a stranger's guest room. A man whose name was right there on the paperwork, who had every legal right to know what was happening to his kids. I picked up my phone. My finger hovered over the call button for exactly 4 seconds. Then I pressed it. Julian Brody picked up on the third ring. Hello. His voice was low and careful, the voice of someone who did not recognize the number and was deciding whether to trust it. Mr. Brody. I said, my name is Audrey Callahan. I am Chloe Callahan's older sister. I need you to listen to me very carefully because what I'm about to tell you is going to be hard to hear. There was a pause. Then quietly, I'm listening. I told him everything. I did not soften it. I did not frame it gently. I just told him the truth in the order it happened. By the time I finished, the line had gone so still I thought for a moment the call had dropped. Then Julian said, Are they okay? Ethan and Zoe? Are they actually okay right now? My throat tightened. They are safe. They are in my guest room. They ate dinner and they slept through the night. I heard him exhale long and unsteady like a man who had been holding his breath for a very long time. I have been trying to see them for 2 years, he said, and his voice cracked on the last word in a way that made my chest ache. Chloe blocked every number I had. She told me through her attorney that any contact attempt would be considered harassment. I have a stack of unanswered certified letters sitting in a drawer in my apartment. I just stopped because I did not know what else to do. You stopped, I said carefully, but your name is still on their birth certificates, and that means you still have legal standing, Julian. My attorney wants to talk to you, tonight if possible. Another pause, then firmly with a steadiness that surprised me. Which airport do I fly into? Julian landed at LAX the following afternoon on the first available flight out of JFK. I watched him walk up my front path from the living room window, tall, dark-haired, wearing a gray jacket that looked like he had grabbed it off a chair on his way out the door, which he probably had. He had the particular look of someone who had not slept and did not care. His jaw was set, and his eyes were scanning the front of the house the way people do when they are trying to prepare themselves for something they cannot fully prepare for. I opened the door before he could knock. They are in the living room, I said. Ethan is going to hide. Give him time. Do not force it. Julian nodded. His throat moved as he swallowed. Okay, he said. Okay. He stepped inside, and I watched him see them for the first time in 2 years. Zoe was sitting cross-legged on the rug with a box of crayons, her tongue pressed to her upper lip in concentration. Ethan was on the couch with a stuffed elephant tucked under one arm, watching a cartoon with the focused seriousness only small children can bring to animated animals. Zoe looked up first. She stared at Julian with the frank, unfiltered curiosity of a 4-year-old. Who are you? Julian crouched down until he was at her eye level, and I could see his hands trembling slightly against his knees. My name is Julian, he said. I knew you when you were very, very small. Zoe tilted her head. Are you our dad? Julian's face did something complicated and painful and beautiful all at once. His eyes went glassy and he pressed his lips together hard for a moment before he could answer. Yeah, baby, he said, and his voice came out rough and low and completely honest. I am. Zoe reached out and put her small hand flat against his cheek, the way children do when they are deciding whether someone is real. Julian closed his eyes. A single tear ran down from beneath his lashes and disappeared into Zoe's small fingers, and I had to turn around and walk to the kitchen because I could not watch that without coming apart myself. From the living room, I heard Ethan's small voice, uncertain and cautious. Why did you go away? And Julian's voice thick with something that had clearly been sitting in his chest for a very long time. I never wanted to, buddy. I tried really, really hard to come back. And I am here now, okay? I am not going anywhere. By the time Becca arrived that evening, with the emergency custody paperwork, Julian had Ethan on his lap and Zoe wedged against his side, both of them demanding he read the same picture book for the 3rd time in a row. He looked up at me over Zoe's head with an expression I did not have a word for. Gratitude and grief and disbelief folded together into something that sat on his face like a wound that was finally starting to close. Becca spread the documents across my dining table and walked Julian through each page with the calm efficiency I had come to rely on completely. Under California Family Code Section 3064, a court may grant emergency temporary custody to a parent when there is evidence that the child has been left without adequate supervision or care. With the abandonment report already on file, Julian's name on the birth certificates, and photographic evidence of the children in my care, Becca was confident the emergency hearing would move quickly. Julian signed every page without hesitation, his pen moving across the signature lines with the determined steadiness of someone who had been waiting for exactly this moment for 2 years. It was that same evening, while Becca was packing up her briefcase, and Julian was giving Ethan and Zoe their first bath, with a father present in 2 years. I could hear Zoe shrieking with laughter from the bathroom, and it was the best sound I had heard in days, that my phone buzzed with an Instagram notification. Chloe had posted. The photo showed her stretched out on a cushioned lounge chair beside an infinity pool that dropped straight into the Pacific Ocean. A coral-colored cocktail sweating in her hand-oversized sunglasses catching the Mexican sun. Derek Mills lounged with the relaxed posture of a man who had never had a consequence in his life. The caption read, "Finally free from the weight of the world. Motherhood is hard. Self-care is harder. Cabo got me like that." 4,000 likes. 112 comments full of flame emojis and heart eyes. My thumb hovered over the screenshot button. I pressed it and sent the image directly to Becca with a single line of text adding this to the file. 3 days later, Chloe's Instagram went private. The poolside photos disappeared, and in the last story she posted before locking her account, Derek Mills was nowhere in the frame. Chloe stood alone at the edge of a balcony overlooking the ocean, and even through the small screen of my phone, I could see the stiffness in her shoulders, the way she was holding herself like someone who had just realized the party was over, but had not yet figured out how bad the aftermath was going to be. On the fifth evening, a familiar silver Camry pulled up to the curb in front of my house. I saw it from the kitchen window and my stomach dropped 2 floors. Richard and Diane Callahan walked up the front path side by side, my father's face set in the particular expression he wore when he had already decided he was right before the conversation started, my mother's eyes red-rimmed and wet, her hands twisting the strap of her purse like she was trying to wring something out of it. I opened the front door before they reached the porch steps. "Audrey." My father's voice was tight and controlled. "We need to have a conversation about your sister right now." "There is nothing to discuss, Dad," I said. My voice did not shake. I was proud of that. "She is family." My mother's voice broke on the last word, tears spilling over before she could stop them. "She made a mistake, she knows that, but you are destroying her entire life over one bad decision, and I need you to think about what you are doing to this family." I looked at my mother, at the tears running freely down her face, at the genuine distress in her eyes, and I felt something in me go very still and very sad. "Mom," I said quietly. She left her 4-year-old children at an international airport with a text message. She used our emergency account to buy designer clothes and spa treatments. That is not one bad decision. That is a pattern, and I am not going to be part of it anymore. My father stepped forward, his voice rising. "You had no right to go after her apartment. You had no right to call Julian behind her back. You are tearing this family apart." "Audrey, and for what?" "To prove a point. To protect 2 children who had nobody else looking out for them," I said. Then I stepped back and closed the door. While I was closing my front door on my parents, Chloe was standing at the reception desk of the Esperanza Resort Spa in Cabo San Lucas. Her face arranged in the particular expression she wore when she expected the world to rearrange itself around her convenience. "I am so sorry, Ms. Callahan," the receptionist said in careful polished English, sliding the card back across the marble counter. "This card has been declined. Would you like to try another form of payment?" Chloe's smile stayed in place, but her eyes went sharp. "Run it again," she said. "There must be an error." The receptionist ran it again. The small screen blinked the same result. Declined. Chloe took the card back and stepped away from the desk, her pulse climbing fast. She pulled out her phone and opened her banking app with fingers that had started to feel unreliable. The joint emergency account showed a 0 available balance and a frozen status. She switched to her secondary card. The available credit was $43. She had maxed it on the Saks purchase before the trip. She stood in the marble lobby of a five-star resort with the Pacific Ocean glittering through the floor-to-ceiling windows and felt the first real current of genuine panic move through her chest. Derek had been covering every charge since they landed, picking up dinner tabs and resort fees without being asked, the way men like him always did in the beginning when they were still performing generosity. Chloe had not touched her own cards once in 5 days. She had no reason to, until now. She called Derek. He picked up on the second ring, still easy, and unhurried, his voice carrying the particular confidence of a man who had not yet received the bill for anything. "Hey, what's up? Are you done with your massage?" "My card declined," Chloe said, keeping her voice low and controlled, aware of the resort staff nearby. "I need you to cover the spa charges. It is just a temporary issue with the bank." Derek made a sound that was almost a laugh. "How much are we talking about?" "The couple's package deposit plus today's session. About 1,400. The line went quiet for a moment. Then Derek said, "Yeah, sure, I'll handle it." But his voice had shifted into something flatter, and when Chloe met him at the spa desk 20 minutes later, he paid with the particular tight-jawed silence of a man doing a calculation he did not like the result of. That night at dinner, Derek checked his phone more than he looked at her. The following morning, Chloe woke up to an empty side of the bed and a note on the pillow that she had to read twice before the words made sense. "Something came up back home. Didn't want to wake you. Safe travels, D." His luggage was gone. His cologne was gone. The room key he had been carrying was sitting on the dresser beside a receipt for his portion of the last dinner, itemized and exact as if he had planned it. Chloe sat on the edge of that resort bed with the note in her hand and felt something she had not felt in a very long time, the specific, airless terror of realizing she had miscalculated everything. She pressed her hand flat against her sternum, as if she could hold herself together by force. Then she called her mother. Diane answered on the first ring, and Chloe could hear from her mother's voice immediately that something was already wrong on that end too. "Chloe, honey. Mom, I need money wired to the resort. Derek left and I cannot cover the remaining balance, and my return flight needs to be moved up, and I just need—" "Chloe." Diane's voice broke in a way Chloe had never heard before. "We tried. Your father called the bank this morning and we cannot transfer enough to cover what you are describing. The resort balance alone is—" She stopped. "Baby, how much did you spend down there?" Chloe's throat closed. She looked around the room, the minibar she had treated as a free resource, the room service charges, Derek's half, that was now fully hers, the spa deposits, the dinners. The number she arrived at made her physically nauseous. "Mom," she whispered, "what did Audrey do?" Diane started crying on the other end, and what she told Chloe in between sobs. The abandonment report, the frozen account, the lease guarantee withdrawal, Julian, the custody filing hit. Chloe like a sequence of body blows, each one landing before she had recovered from the last. Meanwhile, on the 7th morning since Chloe had flown out of Terminal B, I was sitting in a waiting room on the 4th floor of the Los Angeles Superior Court Family Law Division, with Julian on my left and Becca on my right. The room smelled like recycled air and old carpet, and the particular anxiety of people waiting for decisions that will change their lives. Julian had not eaten breakfast. I knew because I had made it and watched him push it around his plate until it was cold. "You okay?" I asked him. He exhaled through his nose and pressed his palms flat against his thighs. "I have been waiting 2 years for a room like this," he said. "I am terrified they are going to find a reason to say no." Becca leaned forward from my other side. "They are not going to say no," she said in the measured, certain tone of someone who had read every document 3 times and knew exactly where they stood. "We have the abandonment report, we have the birth certificates, we have documentation of Chloe's absence and the children's current stable placement. The standard under Section 3264 is met. Julian, you are going to walk out of here with your children." Julian pressed his lips together and nodded once hard, like he was trying to lock the words somewhere safe inside him. The hearing lasted 22 minutes. The judge reviewed the submitted documentation, asked Becca 3 clarifying questions about the timeline and the children's current living situation, and signed the emergency temporary custody order granting Julian Brody full physical custody of Ethan and Zoe Brody, effective immediately. Julian received the signed order with both hands and stared at it for a long moment, his jaw working, his eyes bright and wet at the corners. "Thank you," he said to Becca, and his voice came out barely above a whisper. Becca snapped her briefcase closed and allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. "Don't thank me yet. Thank me when it's permanent." On the 10th day, my phone showed Chloe's name on the screen at 2:47 in the afternoon. I knew her flight had landed 40 minutes earlier because I had checked the arrival board that morning. I watched the screen light up and pulse in my hand once, twice, 3 times, 4, and then go dark. I set the phone face down on the kitchen table. Then I picked up my phone again and typed a message to Becca. 3 words. "We're on. Terminal B." I put on my jacket. I checked the folder in my bag one last time. The custody order, the abandonment report, the eviction notice, all organized in the order Becca had specified. Then I walked out of my house, got into my car, and drove toward LAX with the particular steadiness of someone who had already made every decision that mattered and had nothing left to be afraid of. I got to Terminal B 40 minutes before Chloe's flight landed. Becca was already there when I arrived, standing near the far edge of the arrivals area in her navy blazer, her briefcase at her feet, her expression carrying the calm focus of someone who had done this before and knew exactly how it would go. Beside her stood a man I had not met in person until that afternoon, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a plain gray polo shirt, and holding a manila envelope with the practiced neutrality of someone whose entire job was to hand people documents they did not want to receive. His name was Paul, and he was a certified process server licensed in the state of California, hired by Becca's firm to ensure that every piece of paperwork Chloe was about to receive was delivered in a manner that was legally unimpeachable. "She lands in 35 minutes, Becca said when I reached them. "How are you doing?" "I am ready," I said. And I meant it in a way I had not meant anything in a very long time. We positioned ourselves 15 feet from the arrivals exit, close enough to be seen immediately, far enough to give Chloe room to walk out fully before she understood what she was walking into. The arrivals hall of Terminal B was loud and warm and full of the particular energy of reunions, people pressing forward against the barrier faces, lighting up, arms opening, flowers and handwritten signs, and children being lifted off their feet. I stood with my hands at my sides and watched the door. Chloe came through it 20 minutes later. She looked different from the woman who had sprinted through those same terminal doors 10 days earlier. The tan was there, deep and even across her cheekbones, but beneath it, her face carried something worn and tight that no amount of Mexican sunshine had been able to reach. She was pulling her carry-on with one hand and had her phone pressed to her ear with the other, scanning the crowd with the rapid, practiced efficiency of someone who expected to find what they were looking for immediately. She found me instead. I watched the exact moment she registered that I was standing there without Ethan and Zoe. Her steps slowed. Her phone came away from her ear. Her eyes moved from Becca's face to Paul's face and back to mine, and I could see the calculation happening in real time, the rapid, desperate reassembly of a situation that was not matching any version of events she had prepared herself for. "Audrey." Her voice came out sharp and brittle, trying to project an authority she no longer had any foundation for. "Where are my kids?" Before I could respond, Paul stepped forward with the quiet efficiency of someone performing a routine he had practiced 100 times. "Chloe Callahan." Chloe's eyes snapped to him. "Who are you?" "My name is Paul Garrett. I am a certified process server. You have been served." He extended the manila envelope toward her with a steady, practiced hand. Chloe stared at the envelope for a full 3 seconds without taking it. Then she snatched it from his hand, and I could see her fingers trembling as she tore the flap open and pulled the documents out in a rough, uneven motion. Her eyes moved across the first page fast, then faster, then stopped. The color drained from her face so completely and so quickly that for a moment I was genuinely concerned about her physical stability. Her knees seemed to soften beneath her, and she grabbed the handle of her rolling suitcase with her free hand to steady herself. "This is..." Her voice came out thin and airless. "This cannot be real." "It is entirely real," Becca said in the measured, professional tone she deployed when she needed someone to understand that what they were facing was not a negotiation. The document on top is a child abandonment report filed with the Los Angeles Police Department and California Department of Social Services on the morning of August 14th. The second document is an emergency temporary custody order signed by a judge of the Los Angeles Superior Court Family Law Division, granting full physical custody of Ethan James Brody and Zoe Marie Brody to their father Julian Brody, effective the 7th of this month. The third document is a 30-day notice to vacate your residence at Wilshire Grand Residences Unit 3114 as a result of lease default following the withdrawal of the primary guarantor. Chloe's mouth opened, closed. It opened again. Her hand was shaking so hard the papers were visibly rattling. "You gave my children to Julian." Her voice cracked and climbed at the same time, drawing glances from the people moving past us. "You had no right. They are my children, Audrey. You cannot just— He has been out of their lives for 2 years. He is a stranger to them." "He is a stranger to them because you made him one," I said. My voice came out low and even, and I made sure every word landed clearly. "You blocked his number. You had your attorney threaten him with harassment charges every time he tried to reach out. You told our entire family he was out of the picture when the truth was, you pushed him out and locked the door. His name has been on their birth certificate since the day they were born, Chloe. The court did not need your permission. I am your sister." Her voice broke on the last word, tears spilling over and running freely down her face, cutting tracks through the remnants of her vacation glow. She pressed one hand against her mouth, then pulled it away. "How could you do this to me? I made one mistake. One. And you burned my entire life down over it." I looked at her for a long moment. At the tears, at the trembling hands, at the genuine devastation on her face. And I felt something move through me that was not satisfaction and not cruelty. It was grief, quiet and clean for the sister I had wanted her to be, and the relationship we could have had if she had ever once chosen differently. "You left your 4-year-old children at an international airport," I said quietly. "You sent me a text message with a sun emoji. You used our family emergency account to pay for spa treatments and designer clothes, while your kids cried themselves to sleep in my guest room. You did not call once in 10 days to ask if they were okay. Not once, Chloe." I paused. "That is not one mistake. That is who you chose to be. And I am not going to stand here and be part of it anymore." Chloe reached out and grabbed my arm, her grip tight and desperate. "Audrey, please. Please just talk to me. We can fix this. I will go to court. I will explain. I will do whatever they need me to do. Just please do not walk away from me right now." I looked down at her hand on my arm. Then I reached over with my other hand gently, but completely removed her fingers one by one, and stepped back. "Get a lawyer, Chloe," I said. "A good one." Then I turned around and I walked toward the exit doors of Terminal B, and the August afternoon light poured through the glass in long, warm columns across the floor, and I walked straight through it without looking back once. Behind me I heard Chloe call my name. Once, twice. The third time her voice broke, completely dissolving into something raw and shapeless that the noise of the terminal swallowed up almost immediately. I kept walking. The automatic doors slid open, and the Los Angeles heat wrapped around me like something alive, and I breathed it in and kept moving, and for the first time in longer than I could remember, every single step felt entirely like my own. In the months that followed that afternoon at Terminal B, the life my sister had built on, borrowed money, borrowed credit, and borrowed goodwill, came apart the way those kinds of lives always eventually do, quietly at first and then all at once. The Los Angeles Superior Court finalized the custody arrangement 6 weeks after the emergency order was signed. Julian Brody was granted full primary physical and legal custody of Ethan and Zoe. Chloe was assigned supervised visitation 2 hours twice a month in the presence of a court-appointed monitor contingent on her completing a parenting evaluation and a course of family counseling. Her attorney, the one she had scrambled to hire the week after Terminal B, told her privately that the abandonment report combined with the documented financial misconduct had made the judge's decision straightforward. There had been very little to argue. Without my name on the lease, Chloe could not afford to stay in her apartment on Wilshire. She packed what she could into her car over the course of 3 days and moved back into her childhood bedroom at my parents' house in Pasadena. I know this not because anyone told me directly, but because my mother left 3 voicemails in the first 2 weeks that I did not return, and the fourth one left on a Sunday evening in October was quieter than the others. She did not ask me to fix anything. She just said she hoped I was doing okay. I listened to it twice and then set the phone down and made myself a cup of tea, and I decided that was enough for now. I had drawn a clear boundary with both of my parents in the weeks after everything settled. I was not interested in being guilted, lobbied, or managed back into a dynamic that had cost me a decade of my own life. I told them directly in a conversation that was difficult and necessary and overdue that I loved them and I was willing to have a relationship with them built on mutual respect. But I was no longer available to be the family's emotional shock absorber, financial safety net, or default solution to consequences that were not mine to carry. My father did not speak to me for 3 weeks after that conversation. My mother called on my birthday and sang the whole song slightly off key, and I laughed for the first time in what felt like months. Julian called me every Sunday. Sometimes the calls lasted 40 minutes, sometimes just 10. He would tell me about the week, about Ethan's new obsession with building things out of cardboard boxes, about how Zoe had started drawing portraits of everyone she knew and insisted on hanging them in the hallway outside her bedroom, about the small daily negotiations and victories and disasters of raising 2 4-year-olds alone in a one-bedroom apartment in Silver Lake that he was already looking to upgrade. He was figuring it out with the determined, slightly exhausted grace of a person who had waited too long for something and was not about to waste a single day of it now that he had it. "She drew you again," he told me one Sunday about 6 weeks after everything was settled. "You and your big curly hair. She put it right next to one of me." I pressed my lips together hard and stared at the ceiling of my kitchen for a moment before I trusted my voice enough to respond. "Tell her I love it," I said. "She already knows," Julian said. "She talks about you constantly. Ethan does too, he just does it more quietly." I thought about those two small shapes curled together under my guest room blankets on that first terrible night, 2 question marks facing each other in the dark. And I thought about how far they had traveled from that night to this one, from confusion and fear, to a father who showed up every single morning, and a bedroom full of drawings hung with care in a hallway that was theirs. There is something I have learned on the other side of all of it that I want to say carefully because it matters, and I do not want to get it wrong. Not having children does not mean not having a life. It does not mean your time is disposable, your schedule is public property, or your capacity for love is somehow less than that of people who made a different choice. For years, I allowed people who should have known better to treat my autonomy as a resource they were entitled to draw from whenever it suited them, and I told myself that was what family meant. It is not. Family is not a hierarchy where some people's needs permanently outrank everyone else's. Family is not a system where love flows in only one direction and obligation flows in the other. And family is absolutely not a reason to abandon 2 4-year-old children at an international airport and expect the person you left them with to simply absorb the consequences of your choices with a smile. I am not telling you this story because I want you to be angry on my behalf. I am long past needing that. I am telling you this story because somewhere out there, someone is listening to this right now, and they have been the Audrey in their family for longer than they should have been, and they are tired in a way that goes deeper than sleep can fix, and they need to hear someone say clearly, and without apology, that it is allowed to stop. You are allowed to put the weight down. You are allowed to draw the line. You are allowed to walk through the terminal doors and into the afternoon light and not look back. That is not cruelty. That is survival. And sometimes, if you are very lucky, it is the beginning of something better than what you had before. Julian sent me a photo last Tuesday. Ethan and Zoe at the kitchen table, both of them covered in flour, grinning the enormous unguarded grins of children who are completely certain they are safe and loved. Julian's hand was visible at the edge of the frame, steadying a mixing bowl that was clearly about to tip. I have the photo saved on my phone. I look at it more than I will admit. If this story reached you today, I would love to know what you took from it. Drop a comment below and tell me, what would you have done differently? What would you have done the same? And if you are watching from somewhere new, tell me your city. I want to know how far this has traveled. Thank you for being here. If stories like this one matter to you, subscribe so you do not miss what comes next. There is always more worth saying.